Let me talk it massacre. By a group of policemen under the leadership of the Commissioner of Police in Lagos. I'm right now speaking to you.
Look at me.
From a black Maria.
I am beaten and my phones are seizing.
Brutalized. My glasses.
I will have been robbed. Our phones have been taken by the police.
It was struck away from the hand by a police officer without any provocation. We're asking here today, when the right to commemorate the dead has become illegal and criminalized in this country.
Well, hours after that incident, the Lagos State Police Command released all the arrested protesters. Human rights lawyer Inibehe Effiong, who facilitated their release, made the announcement in a post on X stating that we have secured the release of all 22 activists who were arrested this morning at the Lekki toll gate while commemorating the 4th anniversary of the Lekki massacre. We had a discussion with the Commissioner of Police, who came over to the state CID in respect of the matter. The items seized from the protesters were also returned to them. People beaten, arrested and thrown inside a black Maria by the Nigerian police for holding a banner and a wreath to lay at the Lekki toll gate to commemorate the NSAS Lekki toll gate massacre. This injustice will not be tolerated, neither will it be cowed. Update on the NSAS hashtag memorial. Well, again, the incident was horrendous. It was uncalled for. It's the same thing that is happening over and over again. 4 years after that dreadful, dreadful incident that occurred October 2020.
Yes, yesterday I was with the Lagos State Commissioner of Police at the State Criminal Investigation Department, that is the State CID at Panti, where about 22 very peaceful protesters were detained on the orders and at the instance of the Commissioner of Police of Lagos State. They went to the toll gate in Lagos to peacefully honor the memories of Nigerians who were killed, Nigerians who were shot, Nigerians who were brutalized, Nigerians who were traumatized by the Nigerian army on the 20th of October 2020. This was the 4th anniversary or the 4th memorial of what has become infamously the Lekki massacre. They were entirely peaceful, holding placard and banner, basically seeking solidarity songs to honor, as I said, the memories of those patriots who had, some of whom had to pay the ultimate price for the cause of young people and the Nigerian people. Quite unfortunately, the police felt they ought not to have gathered there. Regarding the statement of the Commissioner of Police that the reason for dispersing the protesters was because they did not seek permit, I beg to disagree with the Commissioner of Police. As I said, I was there with him yesterday. He did not present that to me as the basis for the action that they took. On the contrary, he was making efforts to see how to placate the protesters. Now, having said that, the law is clear today that Nigerians do not require police permits or any permits, for that matter, to exercise their constitutional right to freedom of expression, guaranteed by Section 39 of the Constitution, peaceful assembly and association, guaranteed by Section 40 of the Constitution. Indeed, in obedience to the decision of the Court of Appeal, in the case of Inspector General of Police and ANPP, that was handled by the respected Femi Falana on behalf of Buhari, who was in ANPP at the time, and Okadibo. Yes, when they were tear gas.
In Kanu.
Yes, in Kanu, while protesting the outcome, I think, of the 2003 presidential election. The Court of Appeal held, unmistakably, that the requirement of public permit under or seeking police permit under the Public Order Act was unconstitutional, was uncivilized, and had no basis. the court went further to declare that provision of the law unlawful and set it aside. Now, in obedience to that decision, the National Assembly, as far back as 2015, amended the Electoral Act to even say that Nigerians have the right to protest, and that when people are gathering for protestations and rallies, if they notify the police is required to accord them security. I said if, meaning that you have a discretion whether to inform the police or not. And the reason for doing that is not to seek their permit or their consent. It is for them to protect you. So if you don't need their protection, you don't need to notify them. But guess what? In 2022, the National Assembly even went further to enact the Police Act 2020, which in section 83, subsection 4, clearly says that when a person or group of persons gives notice to the police that they want to protect, that the police shall ensure that they are protected. That provision even recognizes the right to protest on the highway, because they always say you cannot protest on the highway and other public places. So this argument that, oh, you did not come to us to seek permit is an argument that has been buried in history. It's an argument that the law has since trashed and has no basis whatsoever. But the point that worries me, what worries me the most, is that there seems to have been a silent criminalization of any form of protest at the toll gate. These attempts and continuous attack on peaceful protesters at the toll gate, anytime people are gathering at the toll gate, it is as if they are declaring war against Nigeria, or as if they want to overthrow Lagos State government. It is completely outrageous. Currently, they don't allow people to gather at the toll gate, and even those who were there to honor the memories of their compatriots were attacked. And that is why we deprecate that kind of conduct. Because what that tells us is that the Nigerian state, and the police, and the Lagos State government have not come to terms with the barbarism and the sheer act of lunacy that the Nigerian military, or some section of the Nigerian military, carry out on Nigerians on the 20th of October. This was a case, Dr. Bati, where Nigerians were raising the national flag, singing the national anthem that the Milocon regime is telling us everybody must sing by force today, even though they have now changed to the one that we don't know. But they were singing the national anthem, raising the national flag, two of the most important symbols of any country. So when they say Nigerians should be patriotic, that was the day that the Nigerian state, that the Nigerian government shot a bullet on the heart of patriotism. Because if you shoot people for singing the anthem of your country, for raising the flag of your country, you are telling them that being patriotic is not a sensible thing to do.
Okay, Inibe, well, I'd ask you a second part of the question, whether there will be an enforcement of fundamental
Of course. They have already given instruction to that effect.
One of the demands was to end police brutality, disband SARS, which was done, but I don't know to what extent that has ended police brutality. And I'm glad you talked about bad governance. We still had a protest on October 1 around end bad governance. 4 years later in Ibehe, has anything changed? And what can we do to ensure that we honor the memories by changing things?
I think, like I keep, making this point, we have a fatalistic political class in our country, a political class that is, I always say, is intentionally blind and willingly deaf. So they have made up their minds, whatever you do, we are not going to see it. Whatever you say, we are not going to hear you. We have closed our ears. There's nothing you say that will appeal to us. 4 years after, it is still the brazen culture of impunity. The killings of Nigerians by the police has not ended. The abuse of the police, use of the police for civil matters has not stopped. Today, if you have disagreement with your landlord over water supply to your apartment, you can call the police. If your wife does not greet you well in the morning, you can call the police. If your sugar daddy is not happy with you, you can even go to the police. This is how the Nigerian police has been trivialized. So this lack of accountability, lack of institutional reform, nothing has changed. And as I said, look at what happened. In fact, look at what happened during the End Bad Governance protest of 1st to 9th or to 10th of August. Nigerians were still being attacked. In Lagos, the government went and got, I'm trying to be careful with my language, certain orders, right, to restrain the protests or the protesters to the Ganefawemi Freedom Park. In Abuja, Wike went to court. Of course, we are in court now challenging him on that. To obtain an order restricting protesters to Moshood Abiola Stadium. Guess what? Even these places where they restricted the protesters to, which we have said was unconstitutional ab initio, they still went there to attack the protesters. So 4 years after, the right of Nigerians to protest, even as recognized under Section 83 sub 4 of the Police Act 2020, has still not been respected. 4 years after, Nigerians are still dealing daily with the stigmatization of young people for their hairstyle, for the car they drive, the kind of phone they carry, the laptop in their possession.
Anyway.
It has not ended.
Okay, anyway, so a couple of things. I think the most important question that we set up panels that we didn't answer, and I'm going to ask it again. I know you're not going to have answers to it, but we must ask it for posterity. Who ordered the shooting? That's number one. 4 years after, we've not been able to answer that question. We went through the Doris Okobi panel. We couldn't answer that question. Secondly, there's also in setting the record straight. Violence only started at NSAS when we started seeing some thugs that have close political affiliations infiltrate the protesters and started to attack the protesters. Exactly the same fold that happened in last End Bad Governance protest. Yes or no? I'd like to come to you on those two premises and ask, what's your take on the things I said? And also I'll ask you, Oladutu, what's your take on the things I said?
I don't think, well, you've asked who ordered the shooting. For me, Muhammadu Buhari ordered it. He was the commander-in-chief when the massacre happened. And by law, constitutionally, if you look at the provisions of Section 218 of the Constitution, the control of the armed forces is by Section 130 of the Constitution. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Read it along with Section 217 and 218. It is expected that the commander-in-chief would have given a directive. So I hold Buhari liable for the massacre at the toll gate. Furthermore, I was at the panel on the day that the military testified on that point. And I was one of the lawyers who represented the victims of the toll gate massacre, led by the very learned Fusika SN. He led us in representing the victims of the toll gate. On that day, the military general who came to testify admitted under oath that he had a communication with the governor of Lagos State. And guess what, Rufai? After the Justice Doris Okobi panel found that a massacre took place, the Lagos State government, in their white paper, rejected the aspect of the report that related to killing at the toll gate. Guess what? They went behind and offered 100 million, specifically to families of deceased persons at the toll gate and some of those who sustained injury. That is served as an admission by the Lagos State government that they had a hand in the killing at the toll gate. But what worries me is that...
They said they don't have a hand in the killing.
Well, I have given you reasons why I said they have a hand. Yeah. I was there the day the military general testified. How could they not have had a hand? And what have they done? What have they done? If you don't acknowledge the massacre, if you don't acknowledge that people died, if you don't acknowledge that people were shot out, are they saying that the military went there for Tarry night? What did they deploy the armed forces there for? The video is there. They cannot tell us not to believe our eyes. So this is a question of accountability. And we saw the role that talks, as you have alluded to, played. And that is why some people ask, I don't know whether it is a rhetorical question or a real question, whether Agbero is an arm of the Lagos State government. Because we saw these guys being converted in BRT buses. Rufai, we saw it. In Abuja, we saw criminal elements being converted in SUVs belonging to the Nigerian government. Till date, nobody has been arrested. Even the one notorious talk who was carrying machete and chasing people at Alausa, and his picture went viral. Till date, he has not been arrested. So how can you tell me that Lagos State government or that the Nigerian government has no hand in the massacre at the toll gate? I believe the judgment of history will hold them accountable. I believe that a time will come that this accountability question will have to be answered. And people will have to pay for it. Buhari will have to be held accountable. And the military general and the military leaders who gave that directive to shoot at Nigerians for singing the national anthem, raising the national flag, will be put on trial, will be in prison for their role in the massacre. And we will continue to insist that what happened at the toll gate was a massacre.
Basically, the plight of persons who are still in detention, why they've been there, why people will be killed and they will just disappear, nobody will know. But the other part of the story, the other side of the story that I've been talking about, many innocent people lost their businesses. Their business premises were violated. Policemen were killed. Their wives were turned into widows. Okay, you may say it was okay to kill policemen or to burn down barracks. How about innocent people who had nothing, who were not involved in any police brutality, who had to suffer? And policemen too are human beings. They have families. But nobody is talking about them. We just say, okay, we're doing 4th anniversary. We talk only about the protesters. What do you say to all of this?
Dr. Bat, if I could, before I address your question, quickly to respond to some of the points my learned friend Otumba Hassan has made. First and foremost, his support for a so-called National Youth Conference. I think it's just interesting, it's amazing. What is a conference about? Tinubu does not need a National Youth Conference to buy a new private jet. He does not need a National Youth Conference to travel out of the country and go and enjoy while Rome burns. He does not need a National Youth Conference to be using billions of naira to renovate the office of the vice president. He did not need a National Youth Conference to appoint over 40 persons as ministers at the time that the country had almost collapsed. Tinubu did not need a National Youth Conference to announce subsidy gone without any thoughts about policy intelligence or the effect that the proclamation was going to have. Tinubu did not call for a National Youth Conference before increasing electricity tariff. Tinubu has not called for a National Youth Conference before buying new vehicles with his outrageous convoy. Tinubu does not need National Youth Conference before having Office of the First Son, Office of the First Daughter, Office of the First Lady. They don't need National Youth Conference. Dr. Bathi, it is important. I'm saying that is a distraction.
Let's stay on focus.
I'm staying on focus.
After all, in Kenya,
yes.
President Ruto had X-Space conversation with youths, with Kenyan youths, just to get feedback from them. So, look,
which are very important.
Tinubu will not take part in the conference. He has not, Dr. Bathi has not spoken to the media. He has been president for 1 year. No one presidential media chat has taken place. So what are we talking about? Regarding the issue of whether the protesters... Yes, I'm going to the issue. Also regarding the point that people cannot be protesting anyhow, oh, they need leaders, they need to dialogue with government. Who do you want to dialogue with? I told you earlier, but why are we deceiving ourselves? I said we are dealing with people, a political class that is fatalistic, a political class that is determined to go to the grave rather than see Nigeria prosper, a political class that have made up its mind that no matter what you say, we will not hear you. No matter what you do, we will not see you. We cannot dialogue with people that don't understand what dialogue means. The Nigerian youth do not want to dialogue with government. What they want is government to do what they need. Now, regarding those in detention, that is simply part of it. Because we keep pretending that, oh, this is about punishing those who committed crime. Of course, it is condemnable. I don't support arson. I don't support burning government property. I don't support looting businesses. But let us be honest with ourselves. I don't know whether people know how ridiculous some of these cases are filing and throwing up and detaining people are. Let me tell you, in 2017, I defended some people in Akwa Ibom who went to government house to protest for the benefit of the next of kin of their relative late primary school teacher. Dr. Bathi, do you know what police charged them for? Attempted suicide. For going in front of government house to protest. In Delta State, a few days ago, a young man entered a flood swamp road, a bad road, to protest, to bet. The government arrested him for attempted suicide. As I speak to you, those they are charging in Abuja for treasonable felony. Dr. Bathi, you are a lawyer. Go and look at the charge. They claim they wanted to overthrow Tinubu on WhatsApp. We are dealing with people that do not understand that this is 21st century. We are dealing with people that once they fly out of Nigeria, they are human beings. When they come back to Nigeria, their humanity is questioned. This is not a conversation about law and order. This is about a dysfunctional state. And if you are saying that innocent people were attacked, of course I will concede. But that itself is an indictment of failure of government. That is an admission that the Nigerian state is either weak or is incompetent. And that violence, as I said, was largely sponsored by the Nigerian state, and the government must continue to be held accountable for it. I will never support putting innocent Nigerian youth on trial and convicting them when we know that it's actually the government that is behind the criminality that we are seeing.
All right, thank you so much for expressing your thoughts. This question is for both of you. And it's going back to what I asked. I don't think we've talked about or responded to police reforms. We've highlighted the challenges. We've said that the problem still persists 4 years later. And I asked earlier that the best way to pay tribute to those who lost their lives on both sides, whether the police or the people, because part of the demands was a better welfare package for the policemen as well during the protests. Police reform, how can we strengthen the institution? Because we don't want to come back a year later, 2 years, 4 years later, and still be talking about the same problem of profiling of young people, of police brutality, of high-handedness by the police. What are some of the things that ought to be done in the immediate and then long term? So what's your solution?
Well, one of the five demands of the protesters was that every member of the disbanded SARS, I say disbanded in quotes, because they announced that SARS was disbanded, but we are still seeing SARS on our daily lives. So part of the demand was that every member of that killer squad, that murder squad, should be subjected to a psychiatric test to see whether they are even sane because of the way they were behaving. Why is that difficult for the government to do? We have, psychiatric hospitals in the country. We have one, in Lagos here, or some in Lagos here. Why has the government not taken them for psychiatric evaluation? Because it's the same people that were in SARS, they're the same people that are being moved to other special squads now. How do you expect the criminality to end? The other demand was the welfare of policemen. Of course, they are underpaid. The irony of this. The same police officers that are assaulting Nigerians, killing Nigerians, harassing Nigerians, they buy from the same market with us. Many of them cannot send their children to the schools that the politicians are protesting to send their children to. Many of them, when they are sick, they die because they cannot afford Medicare. Many of them, even when they are killed, they are not properly compensated. We see this on a daily basis. Recently, policemen were chased out of Falomo barracks, right? Some of them came to me and complained. The amount that this current government, police paid them, and along with the Lagos State government, is not even enough for them to get an apartment. And they have families. So they too are also victims. So the issue of welfare of policemen must be addressed. And the funding of the police. You go to the police station today to file a complaint, you have to pay for pen, you have to pay for the exercise book, you have to pay for fuel. In fact, now you have to even hire the vehicle. So we need to address funding of the police. But the most critical point is the lack of accountability. The need for adherence to the human rights provisions of the Constitution. We must find a way to hold the police accountable. So the government must begin to take these actions. But if I say this, people will say, well, why are you not optimistic? But there's little evidence to be optimistic. The government is not ready in reforming the police because police is used to rig elections. Police is used to target political opponents. Police is used to commit crimes. So those who have the power to effect changes, they don't see changing the police to be in their interest.
Okay, anyway, a couple of things. So let's talk about two things. Number one will be people that since NSAS cannot come back to the country. In part of this healing, can't we allow them, people like DJ Switch, they've not come back to this country. And there's so many people too that feel that their lives are being threatened. What can we do as a nation and as a government to be able to bring them back? Secondly, will be this conundrum about, also the welfare of the police officers vis-a-vis all that is happening and all of that. Is it attitudinal change the police needs or a complete overhaul?
I think it is both. Regarding the issue of DJ Switch, Reno and others, we're a country where heroes are criminalized, where heroes are attacked, and then the villains are canonized. They are celebrated. They are given chieftaincy titles. They are honored in churches and mosques. They are given national honors. They have streets. Look at most of the streets in our country. They are named after people who have stolen our commonwealth. So people who sacrificed their life, people who took risk to bring to the fore the demands of the Nigerian youth, they are being haunted. That has to stop. They may be, of course, I know some cases in court are going on. In fact, they even went further to freeze the accounts of some of the protesters. 2 days ago, Showore was going back to the US. He was delayed again at the airport. Why? They say his name is under watch list. Can you imagine? The bandits are not under watch list. At least we have not seen evidence of that. Those stealing our money are not under watch list. But those that are protesting, they are being targeted. This has to end. We also need attitudinal change. But I've told you, Rufai, I like to be practical about these things. This attitudinal change cannot happen under the present political climate. Because those that are the helms of power, they have resolved. I don't know why we are pretending. They have made up their minds that these reforms will not take place. Because if you reform the police today, Many Nigerians will not remember EFCC. EFCC is a product of failure of the police. If the police was very efficient, nobody will be so upset, will not be so upset with the EFCC today or ICPC. So we need to reform the police. Attitudinal change should come in the point that the policemen must realize that they are also victims of the failure of the Nigerian state. That when they die, their children may also have to suffer the consequences of their action. And that when they fall sick, the same hospitals that cannot treat regular Nigerians, they will also go to those hospitals without health, and their health will suffer. So they must realize that they are also victims. And that is why they must begin to change their attitude. They must begin to see the Nigerian people as those that they are serving. Because it is this colonial mindset. They have this military disposition to law enforcement. They see those that are supposed to serve as enemies. So when you see the police, instead of being friendly, you see hostility. That has to change. That has to stop.
Okay, thank you very much.